Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We come to you on this Saturday night after we put a couple of NFL playoff games in the bank on the Mike Francesa channel on the Bet Rivers Network on YouTube. Two games down, four big games still to play. Three tomorrow, one on Monday night, which will be played in Arizona. That between the Rams and the Vikings. The first game today, I have to admit, most people, including yours truly, thought the Chargers were the better team coming in. They had played the better ball. Houston had finished very poorly. Their offensive line was bad. They seemed to just be missing everything on offense, despite the fact they still had a good defense. Um, the game gets underway, and the Chargers had opportunities early in this game. And if you've watched enough NFL games, you got the feeling in this one, as I clearly did, that the Chargers not being able to capitalize on those early issues. They get down deep into Houston territory on their first drive. They have a third and short. They miss a block. They settle for a field goal. They get a turnover. They're right back in the red zone. They have to settle again for a field goal. That's big misses. In the playoffs, you must turn those opportunities into touchdowns if you want to win games. Now, for a quarter and a half, we watched as the Chargers completely dominated Houston. Houston couldn't get out of its own way on offense. They couldn't get a first down. Chargers had opportunity after opportunity, but they would drop a ball or they'd miss a block. They had trouble in the running game all day. Give Houston credit for that. Herbert wasn't sharp. He missed McConkey early in the game. He missed him again. Something happened every time. So instead of them building a 17 or a 20-point lead, they're up 6-0. And it looks like that's the way we might finish the first half. And there is Houston buried deep in its own territory where on a third down and 16 on the 17-yard line, they get a bad snap. And you're thinking chaos. Stroud picks up the ball. He rolls right. Now, as this all happens, people improvise. Hutchinson did a smart thing. He came back to his quarterback who was scrambling. A lot of times when the ball hit the ground, defenders give up their concentration. Clearly happened here. Next thing you know, Stroud completes a ball across the middle, 34 yards to Hutchinson, and away they went from that moment on. From there, he hits Nico Collins for a touchdown. They get the ball back in the final seconds. They get a couple of plays. They get a big run on third and on second and 6 from the 36. They get a 27-yard scramble by Stroud. That sets them up for a field goal. Instead of going in down 6-0, instead of going in maybe down 17-0, they go in up 10-6. And you knew right there that the Chargers had issues. What you didn't know was how big those issues were going to be, because in the third quarter, they come out, they don't convert on a fourth and short, and Herbert throws the first of what would be 4 interceptions. He misses McConkey, who is maybe 8 yards downfield, misses him high, way over his head. It gets picked off and run back for a touchdown. Now they're down 2 scores, and things are about to fall apart. Herbert came into the game with 3 INTs on the season. He had 4 today. 3 were his fault. 1 was a throw to the tight end that he popped up into the air and dropped. And how many drops did the Chargers have today? I mean, the Chargers played terribly today. Herbert had a nightmare. They couldn't run the ball. I think Dobbins was on a bad ankle. Maybe we give him a little bit of a pass. The only Charger today that I have anything to say about is McConkey. Listen, anyone who watched them this year fell in love with the second-round draft pick out of Georgia. McConkey, who is not related to Phil McConkey, Laird McConkey had a brilliant season. He had an incredible playoff game today. Not he was the only sure-handed player running crisp routes, making yardage after the catch, catching everything, and then on a 3rd and long, after he had been sacked on first down, brutally sacked on second down, he throws a ball in traffic that McConkey grabs out of harm's way and takes 80 something yards for a touchdown. McConkey winds up 9 for 197 and a touchdown. What a brilliant performance in a terrible performance by the Chargers. The only thing I'm going to say good about the Chargers today is McConkey. If you've watched him this year, you realize he is a bona fide star in the making. Maybe a little Cooper Cup, maybe a little Fred Biletnikoff, if you go back that far. This is a sure-handed, terrific route runner who can line up outside, who can line up in the slot, who can do so many different things, and is as sure-handed. He is a star. He's already a star. He's already a star. I mean, if I had a team, I would move heaven and earth to get him. He is a tremendous football player, and his game today was sensational. But there's nothing else good you can say about the Chargers. Now, Houston took a lot of abuse down the stretch. Everyone kept saying, and I did too, hey, I can't wait and get into the playoffs and pick against them. And early in the game, I felt like things were going the way they were supposed to go. But their defense hung in today, hung in and performed well when it was had its back to the wall early in the game until the offense could get going, and it finally did get going. But the pressure they put on, the coverage they provided, the opportunistic plays they made in the secondary, the way they played against the run, Houston played a terrific game. And that, to me, turns their season around. This game wipes away a lot of the negativity of this year. Yes, they won a division title, but it was almost by default, and they were getting no credit. And if they had gone out today and gotten bounced 20-10 by the Chargers, there would have been a lot of people really hammering on the Texans. Instead, they win today. They go play Kansas City most likely next week. Now, they play Kansas City if, as expected, Buffalo beats Denver tomorrow. I think we'll all be shocked if Buffalo doesn't beat Denver. That would set up the Texans playing with house money in Kansas City against the champs. And, of course, the epic battle that everybody has wanted, and that would be the 2 MVP candidates, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, meeting next week in Buffalo for most likely the right to go play an AFC title game against the Chiefs in Kansas City. Now, while Houston was playing solidly on defense, getting a very good game out of Nico Collins, getting a late performance out of Mixon. Like early on, he did nothing, even had a bad fumble, but then he pounded and pounded and pounded and scored and put up 100 yards. So overall, it becomes a positive day in a lopsided win. I mean, they just drubbed the Chargers in the second half. I mean, absolutely killed them on their way to a one-sided victory. And it changes everything, this 32-12 win. Now with Baltimore winning, and winning easier than the score is kind of like I thought it would be. Could have gone this way, that way on the point spread. Steelers could have scored with 6 minutes left, and Baltimore would have run out the clock anyway and won by a touchdown. Instead, they wound up winning by 2 touchdowns. They dominated the first half to the tune of 21-0, and it was even worse than that. I mean, Baltimore in the first half, with Lamar calling his own number, with him utilizing the 2-man game with him and Henry, and those two running for over 150 yards in the first half, and a smidge under 300 yards for the game, the most the Steelers have ever given up in a playoff game. The proud Steelers were pushed all over the building tonight in the first half. They gave up over 7 yards a play. And when you can line up against the Pittsburgh Steelers and run 13 straight runs into the end zone, you have embarrassed them. And that is what Baltimore did at one point in the first half. 13 straight runs into the end zone. Huge game for Henry. This team, this team is going to, hey, they do not have an easy path. They do not have an easy path. It could be made much easier if Denver ever springs an upset, but they do not have an easy path to a Super Bowl. They are going to have to go through, most likely, Buffalo and Josh Allen and Kansas City and Mahomes to get to a Super Bowl. That's as tough as it gets. Going to Buffalo, to Kansas City. If you could survive those two games, they should give you a trophy just for that. And that's what Baltimore has to do. But you know what? They're good enough to do it. And they are going to be a hellacious matchup for anybody. Now, I don't know what Flowers is going, when he's going to play, or if he's going to play. I don't know. I think they have enough weapons at wide receiver anyway. And he loves to throw to his tight ends, and he's got two of them, led by Andrews, who is a security blanket in big games. I mean, they didn't even have to do anything today. It was just hand the ball to Henry, have Jackson run when he needed a first down. I mean, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, Henry dominated the game. Jackson dominated the game. This game was not nearly as close as the final score of 28-14 because Baltimore kind of put it in the cookie jar in the second half. Pittsburgh at least showed a little pride, at least on offense. They didn't show so much pride on defense. But everybody expected Baltimore to win this game. The Steelers season has to be a huge disappointment considering that they will go home having lost their last 5 games with questions abounding. And no one can knock Mike Tomlin on his career. But sometimes you understand where maybe a change of scenery would do both the Steelers and Mike Tomlin good. Maybe Mike Tomlin needs a change of scenery. Maybe the Steelers need a change of a voice. I know a lot of coaches who believe in the theory that in modern coaching, after a decade, any voice gets tired and old. Mike Tomlin's been running that team for a very long time. He now continues a string where he has not won a playoff game since 2016. This is 2025. Yes, they don't have losing seasons. They don't hit any depths. It's admirable what they do. They have a great fan base and a great franchise. And there is a pride that runs through the Steelers most nights. You didn't see a lot of that pride tonight. But you do get the idea that maybe a change is just going to be good for everybody. That maybe it's the best thing for everybody. And they have a lot of decisions to make about personnel on that team. Right now, the Ravens are thinking, let's go. Next up, we can beat anybody. And I would think the same thing if I were the Ravens. And I think they will be a very tough out in this competition. The Texans, they go to Kansas City. Most likely, that's the scenario, unless Denver pulls the upset. Let's go on the premise they don't. So you have Baltimore at Buffalo and the Texans at Kansas City. They will be playing clearly and distinctly with house money. Not a lot of people will expect them to go and win in Kansas City against a team trying to make history. So they won the game at home. That was a season changer for them. And they did it with a heck of a lot, a really powerful defensive performance. They really did. And it was a nightmare for Harbaugh and the Chargers, who accomplished a lot this first season. Won 11 games, went to the playoffs, turned around the culture in the Chargers in his first year. They can absorb this kind of loss in the first year, but this was a very tough day for the Chargers and a very tough day for their quarterback. When you have three INTs for the season and get four in your first playoff game, it's going to be a long off season. That's all there is to it. Now, three big games tomorrow. Only thing I can add on anything that has really changed as far as the three games, starting, of course, uh, with the Broncos in Buffalo tomorrow, where the Bills are, depending where you are, either an 8.5 or a 9 point favorite. Um, the Packers and the Eagles, Hurts is okay. Uh, that line is settled in around 5 points. Eagles deserve to be favored. Packers are a very dangerous team. The biggest news is in the Washington Tampa game, where it looks like Lattimore will play, and it looks like Tampa. And this is interesting to take note of. It looks like Tampa will be healthier in the secondary tomorrow night than they have been in most of this season. It looks like they will get most of the key components of that secondary back tomorrow. What does that mean? It allows the head coach, who is a defensive coordinator and an aggressive defensive play caller, it will allow him to be far more aggressive in his approach against the very young, but very talented quarterback in Daniels. He wants to blitz. He has not been able to blitz this year because he hasn't been able to play a lot of man to man because he's been so banged up in the secondary. Remember, New Orleans in week 18 in the game Tampa needed really riddled their secondary for a lot of that day with Rattler at quarterback. Washington's going to pose a whole lot more trouble than New Orleans should have. But now they're going to see some new faces and some talented players in that secondary, which is going to allow them to go into a myriad of their blitz packages and into their different coverages, which they have not used a lot. So if Washington wants to give their young quarterback a look at this stuff, they're going to have to go back to last year probably to show a lot of it. Because they haven't been able to play a lot of it this year. So that is it may be a difference maker in that game. That could be a big issue. And then to the Monday night game where the Rams will play in Arizona against the Vikings. The question there is clearly this. You know what you're going to get out of Stafford. The question is, are we going to see the Sam Darnold who had such a brilliant season, or are we going to see the Sam Darnold who clearly got rattled and was way off his game last week against the Lions? I've always liked Sam. I know Sam can throw, and he has shown you this year he can play. But he makes mistakes, and he sometimes holds the ball too long. And the other night, he had a case of being very wild. He never got his game under control. He was under pressure, and he really had a very, very inaccurate night. He was wild high all evening. And that can't happen again. If it does, they're going to lose. He's going to have to be on his game here. And I would think he would be. But again, he's got to answer that bell. The playoffs are different. You know, Lamar Jackson is trying to rewrite his history in the playoffs. He's written his history for the regular season. You might be a Josh Allen fan, and he is a great player. But there is no harder player to defend in all of football right now because of the touch he has and what he does now in the passing game than Jackson. Because when you take his skills and his escapability and the brilliance of his running. And now we had a passer to that who can throw the ball on a dime, who has touch, who has feel, and who doesn't throw interceptions. You have a player who is almost almost impossible to defend. Now he's got to prove that. He took one easy step tonight. He's still now only 3-4 in the playoffs. A win in Buffalo against Josh Allen would be a big, big step. A run through Josh Allen, through Mahomes, and then to a Super Bowl would make him the biggest star in the NFL. Other than Mahomes, he can't catch Mahomes in 1 year. It would make him the now guy, but listen, he's got a lot of work to do to catch Mahomes. Mahomes has built a legacy that it's going to take a while for somebody to compete with. But Jackson is a multiple MVP. We know how talented he is, but he has not been able to do it in the postseason on the same level. We'll see if this year is different. We'll see if everything he has shown this year he can carry into the postseason and win these games. Listen, where he wants to go, where Josh Allen wants to go, where Mahomes lives, they only can get there. The only transportation to where Mahomes lives is winning. There's no other way to get there. You don't get there with statistics. You don't get there with great performances and losses. You get there by winning. By not only making the big play at the big moment, but being there when your team needs you. How many games have you seen Mahomes have ordinary statistics and then make a play in the fourth quarter that decides the game? Those are worth more than some gaudy stats in a one-sided, lopsided postseason victory. Those are the plays that make careers. It comes down to winning. Allen knows that. Jackson knows that. And we all know Mahomes knows it because he's already won. So as we watch Jackson take the step today, we watch Allen tomorrow, and then we watch probably their confrontation next week. There is some great football ahead, especially in the AFC, if we get the matchups that we expect to get. I have to admit, I thought the Chargers would win today. Early on, I thought they were in a great spot, and I was watching the game with my boys, and I said, guys, I got a bad feeling about this game from a Chargers standpoint. They should be up pretty big, and they're up 6-0. It's going to come back to bite them. And it came back to not bite them. It came back to devour them. With the help of all the mistakes, the drops, the turnovers, the bad throws that Urban made, they played terribly today. After 6-0, they got swamped, except for Laird McConkey. He was the one shining star for them today, and he was sensational. So 2 games in the bank, 3 tomorrow. I want to say one thing off the beaten path. So 3 games tomorrow. Will be on tomorrow night after the primetime game. And then we'll be on Monday after the Monday night game. Now, St. John's came into the Garden tonight. Villanova came into the Garden tonight to play St. John's. Last night, Patino was begging the fans to sell it out. I don't think they did, but I gave the tickets I had to my daughter because I wanted to watch football. She's at Villanova. She goes to Villanova. So she went to the game and she said the place was pretty packed. And she said it was mostly St. John's fans. Not Villanova fans. Although Jay Wright was there, but and Brunson was there with Jay Wright. But other than that, there were not that many Villanova fans in the building. Villanova came in playing well. They beat UConn the other night. If they could beat UConn and beat St. John's in the same week and go to 5-1 in the league, all of a sudden the heat on Neptune was going to dissipate. Or is it going to be another good win for Patino, who's only lost one game, that at one pointer at Creighton in the Big East? St. John's got the win tonight. You would expect them to win at home. They did. Villanova played pretty well. They had leads in the second half. It was a competitive game, but a good win for St. John's, who should be ranked this week. Ranking doesn't matter. It matters from this standpoint. If you see a team ranked, you're not worried about them going to the NCAA tournament. You know they're going to the NCAA tournament. And St. John's now is starting to build a very good record atop the league where only one team is unbeaten. That's Marquette. And St. John's, along with UConn, have one loss. St. John's plays Georgetown at the Garden Tuesday night. There's a lot of big games still to be played. There's a lot of basketball between now and the second week in March, but they are moving in the right direction. 30 points out of Lewis tonight. You still want to see them down the stretch. There was one spot during the game, critical juncture, where they missed 5 of 6 free throws. Now, for the night, they weren't that bad, 29 to 39, as Villanova put them on the line a lot. You still like to see them be able to just knock down some more open shots. If they can do that, if they can bridge that gap, have Zuby, have Richmond make their free throws. Lewis tonight was 16 to 20 from the foul line. He went there all night. And he had 10 rebounds. He had 30 points. St. John's, again, as they do every night, will kill you on the offensive glass. They go get shots. The two things St. John's does, they go get shots as well as anybody in the country off their offensive board. And their transition from defense to offense is as lightning quick as any team in the country. You just wish they could shoot a little better. Because to beat a Duke and Cooper Flag, who had 42 today in a win over Notre Dame, or Auburn, if they can keep their big man healthy. Now he's had his second injury. He's going for another MRI this week after they won a 3-point game this afternoon. Auburn, which will be number one, of course, Tennessee got swamped at Florida this week. Auburn, which will be in the number one spot, just has to keep him healthy. And they haven't been able to do that. But to beat an Auburn or a Kansas or a Duke or a Tennessee late in the season or in a Final 8 game, you're going to have to shoot the basketball. You can't go 1 for 20 and beat those teams. But they are moving right along. And the season that I promised, as I said to you back before the season started, I said, get ready for some big days at the Garden this year with St. John's. This was the first, and it looked like they're starting to build something there. And by the time they get to play UConn, and UConn's not 100% healthy, they did win today, but they're not 100% healthy. They lost to Villanova the other night when they missed 2 free throws in the final seconds, down 1. Hey, even UConn can lose. But St. John's is moving into a very solid place, but they have to make one more leap in terms of finessing and fine-tuning what they have if they want to be a team that could do some damage, win 3 or 4 games in March. They're going to the NCAA tournament. They don't want to go for a cameo. They want to win some games. We'll see you tomorrow.